to do it. We've been dealing with a lot of police brutality and police violence in the Chicagoland area, so we're quite familiar with one another, not just because of our cases, but the vast number of cases that we are seeing that are occurring in our city. And so, as you all know, how many of you know the story of Emmett? We have a nice little crowd, but all right, because I don't have to necessarily go into all of the nitty-gritty and the details. He was 14 years old. He traveled from Chicago at the reluctance of his mother's, she really didn't want him to go, but Grandma stepped in and said, oh, let him go. He wanted to go with his cousins to go and visit his Uncle Mobley while he was down there. He was very jovial, playful, and it was very rambunctious. And we know this because Amberly's mother and my mother, their siblings, their sisters, our mothers and our uncles, and our grandparents, they all lived in the same home with Emmett and his mother. Our parents and our grandfather and Emmett's grandmother were first cousins. And so them living and residing in the same home, my mom, not her mother, she was in the womb. But my mother grew up with Emmett, and I've heard firsthand accounts of how Emmett was. And, they say, he was a bad little boy. And they say, oh, he was just a bad little boy, always playful. But he went down south, and he was being a jokester, and he whistled. Let's get that out in the open, because many people question that. Emmett whistled. His mother, he did stutter, and his mother, she wasn't there. And my cousin Simeon, he respected her. And so he didn't go against the grain of what she thought happened while she was alive. She said that he was blowing out his sound, and as a speech therapist that I am, that is what you train a stutterer to do. You teach them how to blow out their sounds, especially their B's. And he was asking for bubble gum. This is true. But he did whistle at Carolyn Bryant when she came out of the store. But let's get rid of the myths. He didn't touch her. He didn't grab her hand. He didn't say bye, baby. He didn't do any of that other stuff. But he did whistle. But was that whistle enough to cost him his life? Did he deserve the fate that he got? Do any of our other victims deserve the fate that they've received? Any of them?
No.
So no, he didn't. But Mamie Mobley, she believed in her heart the innocence of her son. And Simeon Wright and Wheeler Parker, they didn't want to take that away from her. So out of respect, Simeon didn't even write his book until Mamie died. And that was a family choice, because what the papers and the books and the people can't tell you, I don't care who writes a story about it, they can't tell you about what happened to our family after Emmett's murder, how the family was torn apart, how you had siblings that fell out because there was a house of 6 other children, there were 5 other children, there were 8 people in the house, 2 adults, 6 children. So they're not going to tell you how the family fell apart. They're not going to tell you how one blamed the other for letting her baby be taken and be murdered. Why did you let them take my child? So you can imagine the division in the family, the hurt, the arguing, and the pain that transpired afterwards. So you're not going to hear about that. You're not going to hear the stories that my mother could tell you about when the call came in Chicago and the death threats on the city of Chicago, Mayor Daley at the time, the death threats on our family. If Mamie went to Mississippi for the trial, what was going to happen to her? See, it was a whole other time back then. Mayor Daley was told that they were going to bomb his house if Emmett's mother went to Mississippi for the trial. The NOI, the Nation of Islam, stepped in. Mr. Farrakhan has been a friend of our family for years. Now, I'm not a nation member, but I love the nation. Hey, Mark. I love the nation because they've always been protectors of our people. And so they stepped in and they protected our family. You're not going to read and hear about how the food was poisoned. One of my uncles became profoundly ill because they poisoned our family's food. They tried to kill off the family because they wanted to hide what had happened. So there are so many stories that we could sit here and we could tell you today about what happened. For many years this has been going on. This just didn't start. Mass murder of our people in America isn't new. In fact, modern-day killings, lynchings of black people, are surpassing the number of those that occurred in the South during Jim Crow because it is regenerated. It's new. It's improved. It's continuing with those like Rekia boys, which my brother will talk about later. You know, so Emmett Till's lynching was the most unethical, unsanctioned killing and hearing in the history of this United States, as far as I'm concerned. The trial, that was a farce. It wasn't even real to me. It was a farce of a trial. To sit there, it was just a formality. They went to court. You had an all-white, all-male jury. All the KKK, let's just be real, that was the KKK sitting up in all the jury was KKK. The men that killed Emmett because he whistled at the woman, they just did that because they could. They went to the home, into the house at gunpoint, and threatened to kill everybody if Uncle Mose didn't give Emmett to them. So he made a judgment call, and they promised to bring him back alive, but they never did that. They shot him in the head, that's what they said killed him, but the gunshot wasn't even warranted. They had beat him so badly, and they took his body around in the back of a pickup truck and showed him off saying, look what we did to this nigga. There was so much blood in the back of the truck, people in the town thought they had went deer hunting and had shot and killed a deer. So, to me, it was a farce of a hearing. They deliberated for about 60 minutes, drinking sodas when they came back with the not guilty verdict. So when we sat in that courtroom and I went to the trial, I told my brother Martinez, we sat there and they had, for Rekia Boyd, for the hearing for the officer, we sat there and I felt like I was sitting in a 1955 courtroom then. And this is the year 2015. I said, well, the officer and all of his fraternity sat on one side of the courtroom. There were no persons of color, but maybe a token officer that they made probably go to the hearing. Am I telling the truth, Martinez? All of the black people that came to court, they made us sit on the right side of the courtroom. And anybody that came in, they actually, 2 young girls challenged them and went to sit on the officer side. And they went and they got them. The officer went and got them and walked them back around because there were no seats. There were no seats on our side, on their side, and we had a few seats on our side, and they walked them back around, and then they made room and then allowed the officers people to come and sit on our side. But wouldn't allow any of the supporters for Rekia's family to go and sit on their side. And I went home and I started social media. I felt like I was sitting in a 1955 courtroom. I said, this is what it must have felt like. This is what it felt like in 1955. So yes, this is a new Jim Crow system. So our young people, they're pissed off. We pissed off. You know, I'm not going to take up all the time. I'm going to let my cousin Amberly answer the question for the panel today. Because we were talking and she came up with a solution. So I'm going to let her talk a little bit about that. But that was the most unjust farce of a hearing and the worst crime in American history. And I will say this, Mamie is the first person to take back the narrative of a victim. How many of you really remember the names of the murderers of Emmett Till and the woman that he whistled at? How many of you really remember them? But whose name do you remember? Emmett Till. She took back her son's name. She dictated what you will remember. She's the first person to do that, to take back and change the narrative and keep the narrative of the victim alive versus allowing people to take his memory and tarnish it and have you remember who murdered him versus remembering her son. And that's what the people are doing today. Our parents today, they are taking back the names of their sons and their daughters, and they are dictating how they will be remembered. And that is important, and that's something that we must do. We must remember the victim's name and not the people, not the perpetrators of the crimes, no matter how hard they try to criminalize them. So we will remember Sandra Bland.
things that my cousin Emmett said. And no, we may not have been there in 1955, but we lived and knew Mamie, and we spent a great deal of time with her in her home. We have stories that she's told us, lessons that she's taught us to be resilient. That's something that our family definitely is. That's a quality we possess, is resilience. And the idea that we are to stand with others who are going through the same and similar situations. One thing that I will say is that she believed that, and she was often quoted for saying, anything that happens to any one of us had better be, anywhere, had better be the business of us all. And so we stand with so many other families. Martinez, we stand with you. We love you so much. You are a part of our family. And it's important to us because we know that's the legacy of Mamie. That's what she would have wanted. We have to stop these killings. We have to stop it. We have to get justice. Mamie didn't get justice. And justice is something that we want for all of those families. When we talk about standing behind a family, it's just that you stand behind and with that family in the things that they want and desire. It's important that we organize. And I want to read what I wrote earlier just because I'm a little nervous. But being here, I was reflecting on what it felt like to be here with all of these other families. It's been such a good feeling to see so many people move to stand behind our families and other families in an effort to address the injustices that have affected our everyday lives and threatened our existence. Not being a part of the movement isn't really an option because everything is so desperate. Everything is so desperate. America is a hostile environment for Black people, and because of all that we have been through since the first slave was kidnapped from the shores of Africa, to Emmett being kidnapped, and the killings of too many other Black lives, I believe it's important for our people to organize. Organizing is self-preservation in a state of desperation. And I truly believe that. When we organize, when we come together, when we stand together with these families in their fight for justice, we are fighting for the justice that Mamie was trying to receive for Emmett's death. And so that's why we're here. That's why we fight. Not just for ourselves, but for a collective group of individuals who are in a place where they were not asked to be and living in a society that has decided that we will stay oppressed because they can. Because they have the power to. And so it is our responsibility to fight back. And I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win.
There we go.
Now I'll introduce Brock Satter, who is leader with the Boston Mass Action Against Police Brutality.
Thank you. I just want to dovetail on what my sister was just explaining about what Mamie Till did, which I think is it is kind of what our tasks are in terms of those of us who are trying to fight to end police brutality in society. Number one, she had the strength to have an open casket to show the world what was really done to her son, to Emmett, and to expose the brutality that was going on, which there was a sense that, yeah, there might be some violence going on, but until people saw it, it moved millions to look upon and think upon and feel differently. It changed social attitudes. Not only did she do that, but she went around the country and she spoke and she exposed it in, which is what a lot of these families are doing today, which takes a lot of resiliency because people are grieving. And but I believe fundamentally it's how we reclaim and defend our dignity. and cast off the dehumanization that they try to impose upon us, that we don't matter, that we're expendable. And it's not so much that these families have to become the organizers of this movement, although many have been transformed into the real, genuine leaders of this fight. But just the moral authority and telling the truth is the kind of thing that, even in the case of police brutality, we're getting bombarded with images every day in the media. But to a large extent, it still doesn't sink into people until, and it's important to hear firsthand from the people who have been directly affected that this is real. It can happen to you. And this begins to change the social attitudes and the feelings and how people see this issue, and they become moved to action. And I guess that's the thing that led to the formation of our group in Boston, which is called Mass Action Against Police Brutality. We've kind of come through this period of a lot of protests in the streets after the Mike Brown and Airickca case. People were walking, marching in the streets, stopping traffic. We even had an extreme case in Boston where some people chained themselves to cement-filled barrels and stopped traffic. And this was part of the debate about how do we carry out and build a movement that can actually confront the power that we face, the state power and the police. The idea behind the Mass Action group is that we believe we cannot do this with a handful of people. We have to build a massive movement. It's got to be not just, we've come through a period where there has been said, thousands, hundreds of thousands, even if you count up everything. People who have actually started to take action. But as you may have heard, some people say that, well, this has proved that it's not enough, it's not useful. The marches aren't helping because, people are still getting killed, nobody's being convicted, so we have to do something more extreme. But Mass Action, we take a different tack. We don't think we've marched enough, that we've had hundreds of thousands. We need millions, hundreds of millions. We have to do something historic, something that's never been done before. And part of that, too, is in our city, which is about 25% black, a lot of the protests were downtown, and they were spontaneous, built on Twitter and Facebook. And, it was amazing as it was going on. It changed the climate, and I think it's got us to this point where people are talking about this issue. But we have to take it deeper, and a lot of the things that we were advocating, we have to reach those people who aren't on Twitter, who aren't on Facebook, who may not be as savvy or whatever, or don't have the latest smartphone, can't afford it or whatnot. We have to use old school offline methods, flyers. And not only that, to a large extent, at least in Boston, I think it's true in general, that a lot of people, black folks or poor people of color aren't necessarily the most tech savvy. So they're not, when we call someone on the internet, it seems to be predominantly white coming to our protests, which is actually, it's a great historic thing for more white people to be involved and to be opposed to the racism, but it's clearly the most affected by this issue are the black population. They have to be involved. They have to be in the leadership of this fight. And in order to do that, we have to reach out directly to them. So we advocate, and we have to do actions in the hood. We have to march in the hood. We have to reach out in the hood. We got to go direct. So we pass out massive flyers, going door to door, knocking on people's doors, doing meetings, and building up more presence. And even among black people, a lot of, there's different views on the police and the police brutality. The debate has to be carried out. Did Mike Brown really try? This is not a monolithic view. So we have to have the discussion, and we have to draw more people in. And more than that, they draw them not only into activity, but into actually leading the fight and helping, making decisions of you know, what are the things we have to do next. So those are some of the things that we were carrying out. So the main thing is that there's a lot of emphasis on direct action, but some of these actions can actually put us back. You know, some people didn't want to get involved in a situation where they're unnecessarily going to get locked up. We want to minimize the risk for people getting involved in this fight and be mindful of that and maximize participation. So we advocate tactics that open up the space for everybody to get involved, not just the most committed, not just the most people who are willing to go face off with the police right now. We need millions if we're going to deal with the powers that are aligned against us. And the only way we can get that is if people do start to become involved in those numbers. So we've had debates about having a permit for a march. People were saying we shouldn't have a permit. That's asking the government for things. This is our right. Well, it's true, it is our right. And really, we don't really need to have a permit. But it's not a question of whether it's right. It's a question of what's going to put us in the strongest position vis-a-vis the attacks on us to minimize the risk and to encourage people to be involved. What is the purpose of a march? Is it to stop traffic? Or is it to bring the most maximum people out into the streets and to show public opposition to what's going on? These are the kinds of debates we've been taking up. So we've had permits. We've had people walk out of the meeting and say, well, that's violence, you know, we shouldn't be limited in how we oppose the police. Well, it's really no different than you deciding not to just shoot the police right now. We have to tactfully decide what we're doing. So we have to take that anger and direct it in disciplined ways that are going to maximize our impact. So we have to think intelligently. These are tactical questions. They're not questions of principle. So we basically say direct action is a tactic. Mass action is a strategy. Our strategy is mass action. Without millions, you're never going to see any change. So those are some of the debates we've been dealing with in Boston. So we reach out to the hood, mass action, minimize the risk or the victimization. One other point is that a lot of people are under the impression that we just took the streets after, you know, the verdict of Garner and Brown. I argue that the government took a tactical position and allowed us to take the streets. In many cases, they did not challenge people going on the streets. So don't be lulled into sleep where you just come out and take the streets and assume that somebody with superior organized force won't use it at some point against you. So we want to make it hard for them to do that. We want to raise the political price that they pay anytime they try to trample our rights. So these are political questions we have to think through to be most effective, to build it. And truly organized a lot of people opposed, you know, the highway being shut down by a handful of people who chained themselves to cement blocks. A lot of black people opposed that. We had a different, well, that's not really what we were advocating. We weren't part of that action, but you can still be involved. You don't have to do those kind of things to be opposed to this. Now, it is a courageous act. I'm not questioning anybody's sincerity, but we have to choose tactics that are intelligent, that are going to build this movement to be the most effective, powerful movement it has to be for there to be change. So anyways, I'll just, I guess, one other point, and I'm just going to read. We have principles of unity. This is principle 5. It goes like this. Members, former members, or people training or working to become members of any police organization are excluded from participation in the campaign. People who are working or have worked as prosecutors, probation officers, or in similar capacities for the court system are also excluded from participation in the campaign. Police informants and past informants are excluded from participation in the campaign. We say that at a lot of our public meetings. Of course, we can't control what the police do or whatever, and who knows. But we've had several meetings where we've had to escort, I think we're up to 6 now, police. We kicked them out of our meetings. And it's an important point because there's a conflict of interest there, whatever you think about the police. We're dealing with people who have been victimized by the police, and we have to develop the trust that we're going to fight together. And, that's the only way we're going to build that kind of trust, where the people who are getting brutalized are going to join this fight and be a part of this movement. And I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Next, I would like to introduce Martinez Sutton, who is our fearless freedom fighter and has been leading the movement to demand the firing of Dante Servant, who shot and killed his baby sister, Rekia Boyd, in March of 2012. Martinez.
Peace, everybody. Let me see, where do we start here? Just starting from when I was about 8, I've been, how do you put it, harassed by the police. That's the first time I've been put on a police car. My friend next to me slapped in the back of his head, told him to shut up. They ran through our pockets. I mean, we coming from a corner store. We don't know nothing about this. But from then on, it just happened so frequently that it was in our minds that this is supposed to happen. They teach us in our urban neighborhoods how to hate each other. So when we grow up, that's what you find the majority of us doing. So if one of us starts to make it out, another one can try to pull us right back in. And this is from the results of all this police harassment and police brutality. I mean, they used to fight the police used to fight them back around there. Like me seeing this as a youngster, it looked like a game. It looked like it's supposed to happen. But as I grew up and moved out of that area, it was like, yo, wait a minute. This is not the norm. This is not how it's supposed to be. So ever since then, I've been trying to move further and further to a better place so that I can provide a better opportunity for my family, such as my baby sister. I tried to move away from the hoods where it was shooting every day, where I seen people get murdered next to me, where I seen people get stabbed, shot, killed, beat by the police. I used to get dropped off in gang neighborhoods and I wasn't even in a gang. Like this type of stuff that they put us through. But as I moved further away from the neighborhood, it just followed us. It followed us. I used to talk to my baby sister, Rekia, and say, we had a conversation a couple of months before she passed. She came down, and I used to treat her like she was my daughter. She looked up to me. She always said, man, you my daddy. I didn't have a daddy in my life. I looked up to you. You looked out for me. You made sure I was okay. You helped me out when I really needed something. I love you for that. So she sat down and she just said, bro, I know it seemed like I don't listen to you, but I listen to every single thing that you say. And I'm gonna make you proud. I'm gonna make you proud, watch. And I said, Rekia, I'm so hard on you because I've been through it. I've been in the streets. I know how it is. I know the streets don't have no love. And I don't want you to become a victim of the streets. She said, I know, bro. I know. That's why I'm changing. I got a surprise for you. I never got the opportunity to see that surprise. Because the day that I planned her funeral on was the day she's supposed to left to go to a nursing school. I didn't find out a day before when I finally caught up with a friend that was on the scene. I mean, she was just crying her eyes out. She was just crying and wouldn't stop. I'm like, Airickca, what's wrong? She said, me and Rekia is supposed to leave tomorrow. We got our tickets already. She wanted to surprise y'all. That hurt me so bad. Cut me so deep. Because it seems like every time we try to take a step further towards something positive, it comes something negative to try to push us back to wherever they want us to be. You know, so many thoughts came to my head like, how can this happen? How can we stop it? Because to be honest, my eyes wasn't open until my baby sister got killed. Like I said, this was a norm to me. I was used to it. I thought it happened. It's supposed to happen. It was the way of the world. But when my baby sister got killed, I found out that, nah, that's a false reality. It's a false reality that we all was living in, that we was all made to live in. You know? Every day I see her picture, this is what gives me strength. For folks that don't know, a quick story of the events that happened that night. Enjoying ourselves in the park, 75-degree weather. I mean, that is remarkable for Chicago. Like, we can't even walk around in shorts in April, May, let alone barely June. It just started getting hot in Chicago. And so she was enjoying herself, about 100 people in the park. On her way to the store, they encountered an off-duty officer, unmarked, well, in his personal vehicle, at that, in a Mercedes-Benz. He's coming down the alley. They stopped, had words with two of the guys. As he turned the corner out the alley, he stopped his vehicle, and one of the guys said, "What's your crackhead ass want? I told you we don't have no drugs." That's when he pointed his arm out the window and started shooting. Now they say it was 5 shots, but I had the opportunity to talk to this officer. He told me he shot out the car about 4 or 5 times, then got out his car and continued shooting. But yet and still they say it was just 5 shots that he fired blindly out the vehicle. That's no way possible. You out there for blood. You out there for blood. And his excuse for coming out the house was he got hungry. He wanted to get a burger. So you pass by all these restaurants to come in the crib for a couple of hours, then you hungry all of a sudden almost 1 o'clock in the morning. I mean, come on. We all know the drill. You don't like noise. You stay right across the street from a park. Directly across the street from a park, and you don't like noise? I think you need to get checked out, brother. Something is terribly wrong with you. But from that, one of the guys, Antonio Cross, got shot in his hand. My baby sister got shot in the back of the head. I did not find out. I got up about 6:30 in the morning, rode my bike, got in front of the TV about 7, and I'm watching the news story over and over again. 22-year-old girl shot, 39-year-old man shot. And I'm like, oh man, that's bad. I started praying, you know, and I said, this is a crazy world. We need to stop this violence. We need to stop the killing. 3 hours later, I get the knock at the door. "Are you Martinez Sutton?" I said, "Yes, I am. What's wrong?" "Your sister Rekia boy?" "Yes, it is. What's the problem?" "She's just been, she's been involved in a crime." I said, "A crime? What'd she do? Where's she at?" "My first intention is to bail her out." "Well, she's been shot in the head. Here's the number, here's the hospital, sorry." And they walked off my porch. So I went to go look at the TV, and then I looked back out my door, and I'm like, I've been watching this for the past couple of hours, and 10 hours passed, and this is the first time y'all had contacted us and let us know anything of what was going on? I mean, ever since then, I've been on a fight. And they wonder why are you steady fighting? Why are you fighting so hard? I mean, well, wouldn't you continue to fight for your loved one if it's your mother, your brother, your sister, your cousin? I mean, one thing I learned from the hood, I never learned to quit. Because I've been told no so many times in my life, and you can't do this and you can't do that. Well, I know damn well I'm gonna make a change. We're gonna make a great change. Not only for my baby sister, but for all the victims that have fallen in these streets due to police brutality. But nah, we're not going to stop that. Crime victims all over. I mean, we're going to make a big change. But with Rekia, it's so hard because that picture on the door, that's how she was every time. Every time she walked in the room, it's hey y'all or hey girl, and every time she left, it's I y'all love y'all. So now when I talk to folks, I always say love or something similar to that nature, just to show that, you know, it's nothing but love between us. Just like my baby sister taught me. She taught me to do that and taught me to get this love. Going on to the court, because with the prosecutors, I had to go back and forth with the prosecutors. Being a family member and dealing with these cases, you have no choice. It's like they take all your choices away. I'm fighting with this cat, back and forth. Why can't we get murdered? Well, Martinez, we found that this was the better decision, and yes, we're gonna stick with it. Well, why is it in first-degree murder? Because to me, it seemed like he intended to do it. Well, Martinez, this is what we came up with. I got over 24 years of experience in this, and I'm a lawyer. Are you a lawyer? I don't have to be a lawyer to have common sense. Anybody can read a book. You know? So, 2 weeks before the trial, we get into a back and forth. You know, I got folks around from We Charge Genocide, BYP, Black Lives Matter, Women's All Points Bulletin, ISO, RevCom, Fury, yeah, all over, right? So many organizations, the militant, but everybody's telling me what's going on and what they see because I'm blind. I'm blind. I can't really see what's going on. So when I present these to the prosecutor, he gets mad. He gets mad and say, are they lawyers? That was this only response for everything. Are they lawyers? But 2 weeks before the trial, we get into it. I say, I'm not feeling this. He said, so what's the problem? I said, I don't have no faith in you. That's the problem. He said, well, Martinez, put it all on the table. I said, I just told you, I don't have no faith in you. Why is that? I said, because you act like you don't care about this case. And he stated, well, and I said, you don't have no passion. He said, don't tell me about passion. I had a sister-in-law killed on the streets 4.5 years ago. It wasn't my sister, but it was a sister-in-law. So don't tell me about passion. I said, see, that's what I'm talking about. You see that passion you got for your sister-in-law? You use it for my damn sister. That's what I want you to do. That's what I'm talking about. Okay? And he was like, he didn't have too much more to say. We're doing everything we can. I said, well, when I asked you, are we going to win this case? You tell me that